Mark, let me see a little dance. A little bit.
Nice wig. Is that a real wig or is that
Oh,
virtual?
yes, it's real. It's very real. Welcome to season 4 of the Profit Power Hour, episode number 5. My name is the Honorable Brad Johnson, presiding over this court. It is good to see you
Oh
today
my gosh.
for Fees on Trial. Which model stands? Looking forward to it today. Today we have distinguished counselors Mark Brower, owner of Mark Brower Properties in Arizona, and Todd Orchside, CEO of Revolution Rental Management in the greater Atlanta area. And as I mentioned, my name is Brad Johnson. I am the CEO of Profit Coach. Profit Coach exists to help property managers expand their entrepreneurial freedom by building highly profitable, self-managing companies. And I am your host and the judge presiding today. I will probably take the wig off. It's really hot. But, I thought it'd be a fun little intro. Here's a picture of my family by law, by Profit Power Hour law. I must show you a picture of my cute children. So there they are. I love my family very much. And they are what I'm here for. And today we are here for a fee trial. So, very important today, maybe more than ever before in Profit Power Hour history. We want your questions. We have these two gentlemen who are taking hard stances here on fee structures and incentives. So give them your worst. You can use the Q&A box there to ask some questions. I will try to filter some in as we go, and then we're going to try to leave some space at the end for some dedicated Q&A time. All right. And as always, you are probably familiar with these three beautiful slides. We are looking today for a transformation of thinking, and in the midst of all of the chaos, all of the fog in the world, helping you to drive clarity. And as always, to go from gut-based decision making to data-driven decision making. We will certainly be talking about that today, all in service of helping you reach your mountaintop, whatever that may be for your business. Okay, fees on trial. Which model stands? Are you ready? Gentlemen, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay,
Absolutely.
they are ready. Here's the agenda for today. We have three topics of discussion. First, incentives. Are current PM fee structures creating the right incentives, or do we have a misalignment problem? And it wouldn't be a Profit Power Hour without Jim Shantz, meeting agent, chiming in the chat. So we've got that covered. Number two, do owners really understand what they're paying for? What would they prefer? Would they want a higher flat fee without ancillary fees? Would they prefer to keep the line item approach? And number three, this is the fiduciary responsibility and ethics question. Can traditional fee structures truly align with fiduciary responsibility and ethical standards? Okay, before we get into these three topics, and by the way, gentlemen, we're going to try to spend about 10 minutes on each one, leave some time for some Q&A, etc. It's time for some opening statements. These gentlemen have something to say that they have prepared, I am sure. And we will start with Mark, who is the a bit more of the prosecutor or the plaintiff, if you will, in this debate. Mark has brought this conversation forward, and so he gets the opportunity to present his case first. Mark, you're going to have a few minutes, and then Todd, you will have your time as well. And please, if you would, in your opening statement, maybe a quick introduction on who you are, what you're doing in this business, and yeah, then you can go into your opening statement. So, Mark Brower, you have the floor.
Thank you. What are we talking about here? Hi, I'm Mark Brower. I own Mark Brower Properties, very creative name, property management company in Phoenix, Arizona. And my first argument is I'm not putting forth anything new or controversial. I'm just backing up what was always right and true to begin with, which is that in a high fiduciary relationship, fees must align incentives of the two parties. So you've got your classical principal agent problem where the agent is representing the principal, and let's make sure they get paid in a way that benefits the principal. Um, did I give enough of an introduction? My favorite color is blue, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
I have four children, and they're not, well, in a father's eyes, our children are always the cutest. So they're cuter than yours, Brad, but nothing to take away from that beautiful family photo. So my argument is that each of us should be aiming at the very highest good we can do with our time, talents, and resources. Obviously, in property management, that means we want to create the most value for our clients. Let's not pretend we're creating value for our clients if we profit from their misfortune, if we make the most money when things go the worst for owners, and if we abuse our unique position of information asymmetry to line our pockets with money while ducking from regulators who are surely coming to legislate what we should already be morally acting in accordance to. And that means that we have an obligation, a moral obligation, to see ourselves as more than just a transactional service provider. We should see ourselves as um, uh, a business manager for the owner's rental property business. And sure, we should be paid for our hours clocked in and clocked out, but really, that doesn't get close to incentivizing or aligning the impact that we can drive and deliver for our owners and residents. Instead, we should be paid maybe a little portion of our money that we get should be for hours worked, but maybe just as much or more of our compensation should come from delivering outcomes. Let's not kid ourselves. We have incredibly high levels of control and influence about how the owner's business performs. We have a with high with high control and power comes high responsibility. We should hold ourselves to a high enough standard that with all the specific key expert knowledge we have in our industry and our business, we should ensure that our fee structures align what we know, even better than the owner knows, is in their best interest and drive to outcomes that maximize their profitability and also deliver high levels of peace of mind. So, what's under the microscope here are things like property managers keeping 100% of late fees. My argument, bad for business. Now, there's over 100 people on this call. Please don't hate me and throw tomatoes. This is a thought exercise. I charge some fees when tenants pay late, okay? Personally, I hope this isn't a violation of antitrust law for me to say, I split late fees with owners 50-50. But today we're not here to talk about specifics in our fee structures. I want to engage in the philosophical debate around, are we really just service providers that should be paid for our hours clocked in and clocked out? Or can we dare to aspire to something far greater than that and deliver outcomes that truly bless the lives of our clients and residents and get paid more when we do more of that thing? Is that enough of an opening statement?
Yes, it is. Thank you very much. It was clear to me. Okay, over to you, Todd.
Thank you, and thank you, Mark. My name is Todd Orchide. For those who don't know me, I own Revolution Rental Management here in Atlanta. I also do some consulting work through my company PM Assist. Um, uh, I'm married with a wonderful stepson and three dogs, two of which are at my feet right now. No pictures to show everybody, but thank you everybody for showing up today. My view on this is pretty simple. I think this is a question, all the hand wringing and everything that goes on in our industry about fees. This doesn't go on in other industries. That's the first thing I would say about this. If you get a bunch of bankers together or a bunch of hotel hoteliers together, restaurateurs. None of them are sitting around and wringing their hands about how much they're charging for their services or for their products. I think this is largely a result. The reason this happens in this industry, why people worry so much about this, is because the average property manager was a real estate agent before they were in property management, and they were used to basically doing a bunch of work for free, because that's what real estate agents do. They go and show houses for free, they write offers for free, they provide consultations for free, and they're just hoping on that big commission they're going to get down the line at some point, and they just work their asses off for free so much. And then they get into property management and they think that's the way it's supposed to be. I'm here to tell you that's not the way it's supposed to be. The real estate sales industry is an anomaly. It is crazy. There's too many real estate agents. They're all working for free. We should not be continuing with that sort of mentality. We should be looking at this the way every other business looks at it. What does the market want, and what will the market bear? That's really what this comes down to. We're offering a service to people. What does the market tell us about what they want? And while I can certainly see some merit in what Mark talks about with a different kind of business model where you're compensated more on the growth in your portfolio or your NOI or however you want to couch that, the reality is that that's not what the market's asking for. And customers, clients, however your company likes to refer to owners, partners, I've started to hear, that's when you look at what they're looking for, they want a simple fee model that they understand, just like property managers do. I have this conversation with property management vendors also, where they try to come up with unique pricing models. And what they always find is property managers complain about a per door price, but if you don't have a per door price, they don't know how to sign up for you. They don't understand it because it's not simple enough. Owners are the same way. They don't want this convoluted scheme where it depends on what the outcome is. They just want to know, what do I have to pay every month? Is it a percentage? It's a flat fee, whatever it is. They just want a simple to understand management fee. So I think that's important to recognize here. I think it's also important to point out Mark has not implemented these things in his business. If you go to Mark's website, what you'll see is a very traditional management fee, leasing fee, some ancillary fees. That's how he runs his business. So, I think that if this is what you really think you should be doing, put it into practice and see how it goes. I think the result of that would be a mass exodus of clients, of existing business, and you'd be unable to sign up any new clients if you start telling them, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to take, for example, 10% of your net operating income, or whatever sort of mechanism you want to put on that to be paid based on performance. Owners are going to reject that outright every single time. And I think we need to listen to the market there. Owners want the kind of pricing model that we have. So that's what I recommend that people do. I would also say that there are other industries we can look to that have tried to do things differently. And how does that turn out for them? My former employer, for those who don't know, I was an airline pilot for many years. My former employer was Southwest Airlines. When I first went to work for Southwest is when they merged with my company, which was another company way back in the day. Nobody remembers anymore, an airline called AirTran. We told them, you need to charge bag fees. You need to charge premium seating fees. You need to charge all these other things. And Southwest stubbornly said no. And where are they today? They're implementing all of those fees that we told them 15 years ago they needed to implement, because their shareholders have revolted because their business isn't making any money, because that's the way the consumer likes it. The consumer likes unbundled pricing. Every single study that's ever been done on this at an academic level shows consumers like unbundled pricing by huge margins, usually 60 to 80% of the studies that I've seen. They like that kind of model. So I think trying to be something wildly different isn't going to work out for you, is what I would say. And I'll leave it for there to start with.
Okay. Very helpful. Very helpful. So I'm going to turn it over to the audience real quick. Throw this in chat. What's your take on this at the beginning? And I'm going to give you the chance at the end to give your take as well and see if your opinion may have changed on this. Is there a problem to fix in how property management companies are charging fees or not? Is this simply a thought exercise? Is this simply fanciful thinking? Or is there actually a real issue to solve here? And is Mark onto something? So throw that in chat. We'll take a look at that as we go into our first topic. So let's.
Can I I see. I'm not given an opportunity. Like he heard my argument first, and now he's like trying to dismantle my very sound logic, and I don't get a chance to respond.
You do because you get to go first in this. And as per tradition in American debates, I can read the question and you can just say whatever you want. That's
Okay.
how
Okay,
we
that's fair. That's fair. Let's go.
it's how we do things here. But no, you're welcome to respond to that. I get that very much. So, philosophically, your overarching concern, Mark, seems to be that within the status quo, there is a misalignment of incentives between the property manager and his or her client. One of the things that you have said in the past is we should not do well when our client is doing poorly. We should not profit from our client's worst days, etc., along those lines. So, the first thing I'll say before I turn this over to you with an actual question is we're not the first people to think through this. This isn't brand new conversation. It's just being resurfaced. Here's a Reddit thread from 7 years ago. If property managers get paid more with turnover, what incentive do they have to find good tenants? And of course, you have a response, someone on one side, and because it's Reddit, you have someone on the other side as well. So for you, Mark, would you say, and you can address Todd and then come back to this if you want to, but are property managers genuinely incentivized to cause tenant turnover or late payments to do these adverse actions to make more money? Or is that simply compensation for the actual labor involved?
Yeah, that's a very important question. It's fundamental to the argument. So, I, look, I believe that any of us that's on this call today is morally wanting to do the right thing. Good person wanting to deliver good service, good outcomes for people. We're not going out there hoping. I sure hope that we're not consciously hoping we have more tenants paying late, damaging properties, and moving out more frequently just so we can make more money. That doesn't check out for most people. But that's not good enough. That doesn't take the that doesn't honestly address the underlying concern. Economics 101 tells us that incentives drive behavior. It's just a fact that what you pay someone to do, they will do more of that thing in the long run. Todd and I have exchanged newsletters and emails about this prior to today's call. And one of Todd's arguments is, look, don't tell me it's immoral for me to charge and keep 100% of late fees when tenants pay late. I worked hard for those late fees. Well, maybe you did work hard for those late fees, but if the fact remains that your net profit monthly on that specific account jumps 200% when you pocket all those late fees, that's not in alignment with the owner's best interest. The fact remains we have a problem when property managers make the most money when things go the worst for the owner, period. If the property manager makes the most money when they put in a chronically late paying tenant who leaves after 1 year and does quite a bit of damage to the property because we have maintenance markups. 25% of our profits or 50% of our profits come from large fees when tenants move in and out of the property. Oh, and even worse, what if we charge management fees while the property's vacant, justifying that and saying, hey, look, we still have the liability and we're doing the work here to manage the property. At the end of the day, Todd sort of underestimates the impact that a property manager can have. When he's bringing up these bad analogies of bankers and restaurateurs and arguing that market drives what people are paying, he's not acknowledging that there's asymmetry of information and a lack of sophistication for most of our clients. They have no idea. If we wouldn't go out and voluntarily sign ourselves up as a landlord for these services in another marketplace, I've often told friends and family that are hiring property managers out of state, look, if you here's the questions to ask. Get to the bottom of what drives their profit. Because whatever drives their profit, they're going to be doing more of that thing. What if we could find a property manager that's making the most money when things were going the smoothest for the owner, when tenants were paying on time every month, when the property was being very well respected, when renewal rates were 70 to 80%, and we're still capturing really strong market rents. What if that is that not the ideal scenario for the owner? Why would our incentive model not give us the most profits when that outcome is happening?
So,
Go ahead.
Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead, Todd.
So I would first start off by saying I definitely agree with the comment that you should always look at the incentive structures. That's always important to see what's motivating someone. But I think where the problem comes in here is that you're looking at revenue as the only incentive structure. And there's a lot of other things going on here. Number one, revenue doesn't equal profit. And no one understands that better than Profit Coach and Brad. You got lots of companies with tons of revenue and no profit. So just the fact that someone is bringing in money on a certain thing doesn't mean that that's profitable money. So let's look at something like a late fee, for example. The fact that I'm bringing in revenue on a late fee doesn't mean that that's the most profitable activity for my business. That's a lot of work. A lot of employees are doing things to deal with those late paying tenants. It's also a reputational cost because those tenants are going to get upset. They're going to post Google reviews. We're going to have problems there. There's all sorts of inputs that are going into that situation other than the revenue aspect. My argument there is simple. I don't want late fees because late fees are a lot of work. Tenants that don't pay rent on time, that creates tons of work for my team. It creates unhappy owners. It creates bad Google reviews. There's a whole lot of negative repercussions there. So I have lots of incentives in place pushing me towards having the lowest delinquency rate possible. The revenue isn't overriding that. The revenue is compensating me for all those hassles. It's paying for the team that needs to do all that work. That's what the revenue is for. I would argue I don't make money on late fees because if I didn't have delinquent tenants, I wouldn't have to have a very big staff. I don't make money on maintenance because if I didn't need to do maintenance, I could cut my labor cost to almost nothing. So, I mean, all of these things are adding enormous cost to the business when we have to deal with them. That's what the compensation is for. Or as Don Draper would say, that's what the money is for. That's what the whole point here is. That's why we get paid. Someone else in the chat dropped what I thought was perfect. They were talking about attorneys and dentists. Yeah, I don't go to my dentist just because, I want to go see my dentist and have a great relationship with him. I go to my dentist because my tooth cracked. I need to get it filled. My day is awful. You think he's not going to charge me for that because it's a bad day? Of course he's going to charge me for that. That's what he's there for. That's just what I'm here for. If my tenant or if an owner's tenant needs to be evicted, the owner has hired me to deal with that situation. And yeah, it's a terrible day for that owner. In fact, in some parts of Atlanta, it's going to be a terrible next 9 months trying to get rid of that tenant. But I need to be paid for my work, just like my dentist needs to be paid for my cracked tooth or my attorney needs to be paid for my lawsuit. The fact that they're having a bad day doesn't mean that I don't get compensated for that. So I would just think the incentive structure argument, I think it's a good discussion to have. We should always look at what the incentive structures are, but I think we're simplifying it too much if we're only looking at one incentive, which is the revenue.
Yeah, and I think it's not analogous, Todd. Doctors and lawyers, we've already gone back and forth about this previously. They're hired after things go wrong. PMs are hired to prevent things from going wrong.
Do you not have attorney on retainer?
Doctors and lawyers do not control the means of production. They don't significantly influence the profitability of our businesses. We are in a much higher state of fiduciary, I would argue, than your doctor or your lawyer or your dentist. When we show up, something's wrong. They help us out. Would I pay my doctor more money if if he prescribed a bad meal plan for me that made me more sick than I otherwise would be? We control so much about this rental property business. Whether we classify, whether we say that, hey, we're really not asset managers, or we're really not business managers, or I saw a chat in the comments where, hey, my property manager is not even qualified to act like or think like an asset manager. Regardless, they have a huge impact on tenant goodwill, on the quality of vendor relationships and repairs being done, on tenant selection. These are all things that you don't turn over that level of control to these other professionals that you're trying to make this analogous to. And so there's a higher standard for the impact that we're driving because we do have that kind of impact. Profit should reflect value created, not work done. High fees should reward stability, not failure. Recover your costs, yes, but don't profit most when the outcomes are worst. If you and I sat down and charted out on a spreadsheet exactly how many hours your staff, you're claiming there's this huge cost, and you also exaggerated the fact that in your statement just now you said that if fees were the most profitable thing, late fees were they're not the most profitable thing, and there's not a huge cost of labor of collecting late fees. We all know that. My argument isn't that I'm not taking a purist position that all fees are bad. I'm saying that they have to be very carefully designed. You also earlier made an argument that the market is getting what the market wants. Not so. Not so. The market does not understand, and you're going to argue this is paternalistic and condescending. It's not the case that that the general public understands the nuance of the profit drivers for property managers and how they could impact behavior. It's just not the case. We can argue all day long till we're blue in the face that I just don't want late fees because it's not good for my business. I'm going to get 1-star reviews, and then stick out our hand on the side and make 4x profits every time someone pays a late fee. The incentives are not aligned. It's not a measured. It's not a measured output for input.
So, I mean, the first thing I would say to that is saying that we are in some sort of elevated position as far as this as compared to doctors, where our fiduciary duty is even stronger, is the only word I can think of is absurd. A doctor is responsible for your health. There is nothing on earth more important than that. And, the idea that we need to somehow have our compensation model so different than theirs because we're a fiduciary, they are a fiduciary, not just of our money, but of our very life. So the idea that we have to be somehow detached from that, I think just there's no argument there that makes
Totally
sense.
disagree. That would be akin to a doctor putting food into our mouths with us out having the discretion to put, like we
You
in
can
property
leave your
management.
property manager just like you can leave your doctor. It's no different. If you don't like the advice your doctor's giving you, you can find another property manager.
Yes, except that property managers are a unique leveraged position of information asymmetry, and most owners never discover the level of abuse or incompetence that can, I'm not saying often, but can exist in a property management relationship. You know why? The tenant is always the scapegoat.
I would say that there's some delusions of grandeur going on there. We are not that amazing. We are not that important. We are not we are just a service business. I get the desire to want to feel that you're more important than that, but we are just running a service business here. And it is paternalistic to look down on an owner and talk about how they don't
It's not what's being done.
you don't understand what the fees are. You don't understand what you want. You don't understand what the incentive structures are. That is just demeaning to our clients. And I don't think you would want your clients to hear what you've said here about those things. Owners, I mean, you can make the same argument about any business they go to. They don't understand all that goes into, the hotel that they go to, and how much money the hotel is making and how they make their money, and, what these resort fees, how much money they make off of them. You can make this argument about literally any business on earth. No consumer understands everything that goes into it. And I mean, I reject these arguments on even, the most hated of industries, like, payday loans or mortgage brokers. I don't believe in any of this predatory lending or anything. People can make their own decisions. I trust consumers to do their research and make their own decisions. I am not going to be the person that tells them, no, you can't have an unbundled pricing program because that's not what's best for you.
Well,
That's demeaning.
Yeah, well, the legislative body disagrees with you, Todd, and that's why we see unnecessary restrictive legislation being introduced in coastal metropolitans, because they see the asymmetry information problem. They see that owners of property management services are not always rational actors. And that's exactly why ethical incentive design matters. Otherwise, we're inviting unnecessary, unhelpful regulation into the industry. Most landlords, especially first-time or small ones, do not possess financial literacy, behavioral objectivity, or business management experience to recognize adverse incentives baked into PM fee structures. It's just the reality. It is not
Go
paternal.
post that
So,
on your website.
so
Go do a blog on your
I
property
will.
management
That
company's
is okay.
website and say that.
I actually created video content about this because
But
I
are
think
you
we need.
marketing it to your owners? I know you're
I
telling
think we should.
property managers that, but what about
Yes.
your clients?
Yes, I think the
That's
world needs. I think it's time for us to have an honest conversation with landlords. Like we've cowered behind this. We've cowered about this issue for decades in our industry. The fact remains that the emotional liabilities of the landlord pose the biggest single threat to their long-term profitability and value creation in this industry. And instead of acknowledging and confronting that reality with honest, skilled dialogue, instead we hide behind our leveraged position and fee extract without value creating, without leading with value. We overly fee extract, and then we justify it to ourselves with a chip on our shoulder, thinking, well, I've got a damn hard job and nobody appreciates me anyway. That needs to change.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna pause it there. What I think I heard was Mark saying that before I move on, that you would actually consider putting your money where your mouth is on this particular point and actually putting out to your landlords and maybe even on your website your thesis on the fact that they don't know what they don't know. Is that true? Is that something you're considering doing?
Absolutely. Just because I'm not doing this perfectly doesn't invalidate the importance of this thought exercise.
I don't think Todd's saying that. I don't think Todd's saying that. But I do think he's challenging you, and it sounds like you're accepting some of that challenge to implement some of this for yourself and to see how it goes. So, all right.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, and again, I don't want to violate antitrust laws. I'm not going to go into the details of our fee structure. And again, I'm not going to say that I'm doing all of this already, but I think it's really, really, really important for us to think very critically about the nature of our relationship, our fiduciary, and how we charge aligns with the owner's long-term best interests, and not just sort of keep hiding behind the fact that we're doing a lot of work and our life is hard, and so we should be paid for all that work. There are some asymmetries in how we charge and the actual value we're adding to the owner at the end of the day, and we have to actually dare to expand the vision of our impact for the owner in order for this discussion to reach a logical conclusion. And by the way, I think every single property manager has to craft their own policy that aligns with their core incentives. I'm not dictating anything broad scheme, systemic here that should apply to everybody. I think these principles are important to think about.
Understood. Understood. Okay. Throwing a poll out there. Do current property management fee structures generally align incentives well with property owner interests? Yes, they're generally aligned, partially aligned, or could use some improvement. Got that poll going right now. Going to give you 10 more seconds to respond, and then I will throw the answers out there. And here you go. End poll, share results. Do current PM fee structures generally align incentives well? Yes, general alignment. Partially aligned and could use some improvement. 0 at the moment on substantial, significant issues exist. So we're split between things are roughly aligned on the incentives, and there's work that could be done. So that's an interesting data point for us as we proceed here in the rest of our conversation. Okay, we've touched on this a little bit. This will give you guys a chance to go a little bit deeper here. Consumer choice and market realities. What do owners actually value, and how should we respond? Okay, I'm going to throw another poll at you real quick, because this is something that Mark and Todd have gone back and forth with, and I have thought has been a very interesting thought exercise. Do you think owners would prefer a higher flat monthly management fee with no ancillary fees, something, Mark, if I'm not mistaken, you have proposed as an idea, whether that's a flat fee or it's based on the value of the property or something like that, but a bundled fee, or lower monthly fees with ancillary charges? Just so that I'm clear, Mark, is that accurate to what you've put forward?
Yeah, actually, I would advocate for a hybrid, and not just a flat fee monthly. But well, actually, let me digress just a little bit. I think one thing that Todd and I are 100% aligned with on is that property managers should be paid the absolute very most money they possibly could be paid for the value they create. My argument is just that we should focus more on the value creation and get creative there instead of applying our creativity to fee extraction, because that brings us into all kinds of problems. So I actually advocate for a hybrid percentage plus flat fee. And not we're doing this, but I don't know anybody else that is, because that brings down the ceiling for the higher end properties, and it gives the higher end maybe more financially a strong clients that own these a little bit nicer, larger rental properties. It brings their fee down a little bit, and also brings the bottom up. So I think that generally we're doing about the same amount of work, regardless of how big the property is. There's some variance there, but if you do a hybrid of a flat plus percentage, it narrows that range. And again, we came up with that because we were trying to, figure out how to more closely match the value creation with the fees.
Okay, understood. Thank you for that clarification. Here are the results from this poll. Just keeping it simple, higher flat fee, simplicity is better. Lower monthly fee, they'll pay extra as needed and depends on circumstances. Fairly split here. You do have some advocates for the higher flat fee model. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. A lot of people saying it depends, and then, close to half with a lower monthly fee, they'll pay extra as needed, which I would describe as the traditional model. So I'm going to go over to Todd for this next one, which is one of Mark's biggest issues with your point of view is that the ancillary fee model introduces substantial complexity for the property owner, such as a long list of fee schedules, while simultaneously having an asymmetry of information. So how would you respond to that? And how do you ensure that landlords fully understand the ancillary fees and know how they're being charged and why they're being charged? I would say, I think if you could answer that, that might really address some of Mark's biggest issues with your point of view.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say to that is I actually think that what I'm arguing for is more simple rather than less simple, despite the ancillary fees. And the reason for that is most owners never pay any of the ancillary fees. Most of the ancillary fees that I advocate for are usually on the tenant side. On the owner side, it's usually very simple: a management fee, a leasing fee, and a maintenance fee. That's usually all that most owners are getting charged. The only time they're getting charged anything extra is if they ask for additional services. So, if they want us to do things that we don't normally do, you want me to go down and move your trash can behind the house that you forgot to do before you handed over the house to us. Okay. We'll do that. It'd be $50 an hour. I'm happy to do those things, but those are not part of what a normal owner would pay. A normal owner is just going to pay a very simple structure. And I think people do like a type of structure where it is unbundled, in the sense that if they want additional services, they pay for it. If they don't want additional services, they don't. And I think maintenance is the primary example of why I think this is actually more fair. Mark argues that if you have a maintenance charge, for example, that you're incentivized to get more maintenance done. I think this is completely out of whack with what's really going on. The way I look at this is, if you don't have a maintenance surcharge, let's say you don't have any sort of maintenance fees whatsoever, you don't charge any commission on top of it, all you get is your management fee, let's say. What is that doing for the owner who has a brand new house that he just bought, build to rent, let's even call it? Let's say you're doing some build to rent work. That owner is probably not going to have any maintenance costs for the next few years. He is subsidizing, essentially, the owner who has the property built in 1910 that has 2 work orders a month, because you're still going to have to get that money somehow. The money that you would have made off of maintenance, you're just moving it over to the management fee, and you're boosting up your management fee, or you're boosting up some other fee to make up for that revenue, because you have to get the revenue somehow. There's no way around it. The business costs what it costs. You got to have your profit margin. You got to pay for your labor. So instead of charging it on maintenance, you're just charging it over here instead. So what's happening is you're spreading all those costs out so that the owner with the brand new house pays the exact same as the owner with the house built in 1910 that needs all the work. he should be paying for that. That's the owner that should be paying for that because he's getting those services. Why should the owner who paid primo for his brand new house pay to subsidize that? That's what I think is unfair. That's what I think the problem is with these kind of models where you try to eliminate the charges based on work done and instead just lump it all under one fee. That's not fair to anybody. The people who should be paying are the people who want the services, just like any other business. If you go to a hotel and you want to use the spa, you pay for the spa. Everybody that stays at the hotel doesn't pay for the spa because they're not using it. So my view is it's always more fair when you unbundle these things and they're paid for the services that you actually use instead of the services that you're not using. That's how I look at it.
Okay, Mark, go for it.
Yeah, general agreement with Todd on this point, actually. So if we're managing a 1910 home versus a 2010 home, totally agree that there's an adverse pull on company resources that has to be compensated. Also, totally agree it's not fair to ask that owner with that newer property to subsidize the properties that have the older, more prolific issues. And so, look, I'm not suggesting that this is not 0 or 100. This is not black or white. I'm not suggesting that we cut out all fees. I'm just suggesting that we closely examine whether there's an adverse incentive structure in place. If there's a modest weight to fees that that subsidizes additional cost for the property manager's resources for older homes, I think that's appropriate. That's not the argument I'm making. I'm making the argument that when that's 3x of what those actual costs are, like in the case of collecting late fees, then there's a misalignment of incentives. If we could get the ideal incentive model, implemented, it would allocate a cost reimbursement for the disparity between the actual cost in servicing different assets, and for that matter, different owners, actually. like if we could measure how often the owner calls in to the business, I'm 100% okay with adjusting their fees to offset those costs. If in a perfect world, and I know we're not in a perfect world, and Todd might call me out that, oh, that's nice in fantasy, but that doesn't work in the real world. Just because it's a fantasy or because it's some kind of a dream concept, or in our company, we call it the concept car. Concept car isn't going to go into production, but it's at the car show to test the thinking and to push the boundaries and to influence future design. That's what I'm attempting to do with this dialogue. Excuse me.
The Arizona air is very dry.
Yeah. And yes, if we could somehow put the resource if we could put the resource cost on par across all owners and all properties and have it cover the actual difference in cost, I'm fine with that. That's not easy to do. But what we have to be careful about is the things that give us bonuses. This is like compensation package for an executive. Executive has a base level of comp, and then they should get bonused based on how well the business does. We should see ourselves akin to that type of a compensation package.
So one of my main questions for you on that is, first, you've mentioned late fees a few times as the place where there's a misaligned or misaligned incentive. Are there other fees where you think that exists, and are you suggesting or know that PMs are intentionally allowing people to pay late to make more money? Like, is it just theoretical? Is it just philosophical for you? Or do you think that property managers are actually utilizing what is in your mind a perverse incentive to drive more revenue?
I don't think anyone's doing this intentionally, but the fact remains, if it shouldn't be a bonus for the behavior, for the outcome, don't make it a bonus. Like, actually recoup. If your argument is like, we're doing so much work to collect these late fees, then actually show me how many hours are spent by your staff collecting late fees, And let's make the comp back to the PM appropriate for that level of work. But let's not make it a windfall bonus structure because we can grab money from this thing. That's the thinking that's wrong in our industry. Because it's not illegal yet, we're making a lot of our profits in these ways. Well, tell me how that drives value for your client. It doesn't matter. We deserve it. That's the wrong kind of thinking.
Are there any other? Are there any other? Oh, sorry, Todd. I'll let you go in a second. But are there?
No,
Are there any other examples you can provide other than late fees?
Yeah. So the management fee while the home's vacant. If we're really going to say, hey, I'm going to align myself, I'm going to try to creatively design my fee structure in a way that most closely aligns my reward with the owner's reward. We might consider charging zero management fee while the home's vacant, right? Or we might consider dropping our leasing fees way down, right? Because we shouldn't incentivize, we shouldn't bonus ourselves for turnover. Well, I don't want turnover. Turnover's terrible for me. Okay, great. Say that all day long, but put your money where your mouth is and don't charge a lot of money every time there's turnover, right? Every time that there's a surplus of profit, we should be closely examining what behavior that drives. There's a local competitor that will remain unnamed here in Phoenix who charges about $1,000 to the resident when they move in as move-in fees between all the application admin fees, 25% of the security deposit, which is just magically non-refundable and goes as a fee to the property manager for exactly nothing. If you add all these up, it's close to $1,000. And then you look at that, it actually over the first year in management, the tenant's paying $200 a month to this company. I did a breakdown on it. So what does that do? Who's really paying for that? The owner is. How are they paying for it? In lower rent and bad tenant will, right? So we're just excusing ourselves. We're exempting ourselves from any accountability for our fee structure, just arguing that it's not illegal yet. And so I think what's on the table is high leasing fees, keeping all the late fees, charging management fees while the property's vacant, and excessive maintenance markups. Like these all have to come under the microscope if we're going to be have integrity around our fee structures.
Todd, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of weird because Mark leans right politically and he's arguing against capitalism, and I lean left politically and I'm arguing in favor
Straw
of it
man. I'm not arguing against capitalism. Straw man.
You
Keep
are
going.
because
Nope.
you're basically arguing that if you make what you call excess profit, which I would say there's no such thing, then there's a problem there. And you're running a business. This is not a for-profit or this is not a non-profit endeavor. There's nothing wrong with making money. And if you're, there are SaaS companies that have 70 and 80% gross margins on what they do. And there's, McDonald's, by the way, is currently generating a 40% profit margin. We can argue all day what's a
profit is good
profit margin and but you can't say that, Mark, and then at the same time say excess profit is bad. If you're making
no. It matters where the profit comes from. It matters exactly. My argument is it matters where the profit comes from because that drives behavior.
Let's look at that. So, and I see some comments going on in the comment section that are kind of reiterating this, but I just want everybody to think, because I think most people here are people who regularly attend conferences and that sort of thing. Just ask yourself, have you ever been around a group of property managers and heard someone say that they were glad that they had a bunch of tenants who were delinquent and they paid late fees? Have you ever met a property manager who said they really liked it that they had high turnerver and that they got a bunch of leasing? It does matter.
It doesn't matter if they like it, Todd. It doesn't matter if they like it.
It doesn't. Mark, hold on. You had your time to talk. Give me a minute.
Okay, sorry.
That does matter because it gets to the heart of what you're claiming here. Because what you're claiming is that there's an adverse incentive structure.
There is.
And the only way there can be an adverse incentive structure is if there's a perception on the part of the person you claim is being incentivized to do this that tells them that it's in their best interest. If they don't think it's in their best interest to drive that behavior, then there is no incentive structure driving them towards it. You think there is just because there's a revenue component, but that doesn't create the incentive structure because there's other incentives related. And the reason you'll never hear a property manager say that they're glad they have high turnover, or they're glad there's a bunch of work orders, or they're glad there's high delinquency, is because there's so many incentives against it. And the money, the revenue, is only compensating them for all of those bad incentives against it. That's all it is. Nobody is hoping that they have a bunch of tenants who pay late. Nobody is hoping they have a bunch of extra work orders, or that their turnover is 50%. Nobody wants that. Doesn't matter how much they charge for it. It's not in their best interest. It's not in the owner's best interest. Nobody's looking for it. So the negative incentive structure that you keep claiming is there just does not exist.
Okay,
Okay.
Todd's arguing because there's no property manager
30 seconds, Mark.
Okay, you're arguing that because no property manager wants late payments or maintenance issues, it means there's no conflict. That's not how incentives work. Incentives don't require intention. They just quietly shape behavior over time. You can have a conflict of interest without bad intent. In fact, most conflicts are dangerously precisely because they don't feel wrong. They're just financially rewarding in the background. Done.
Okay, thank you for that. Todd, you'll have a chance to address this in just a second, but it's already 51 past the hour, so we're running out of time, and I want to make sure we're able to do a little Q&A here. So before we do that, throwing up a poll here. Would you like help defining a fee structure that aligns with your value proposition, that maximizes your profitability? You've heard a lot of different takes here, and I would love to help walk you through that as an opportunity to meet with you. So if you'd like to do that, we're throwing up a poll here right now. You can let us know. You can scan a QR code that goes straight to my meeting calendar. I can help you look at this from a financial standpoint based on your goals. So I'll help you get clear on the revenue per unit you need to reach your financial goals. So how can you structure your fees? What's the right value proposition in order to get you there? And really just pinpoint those revenue streams that can drive the profitability that you need in order to reach your goals as an entrepreneur, and then ultimately help you create a plan to implement those changes within your business. So maybe help take some of the philosophical, as helpful as it's been, and apply that to your business, and be able to really help you drive profitability. So you can scan that QR code that goes straight to my calendar. Or if you're coming to Southern States, I know, Todd, I'll see you there in a couple weeks.
Nice.
We can meet up at Southern States as well. Mark, will you be there?
Yes, I will.
Oh, all right. Look at that. So we'll all be in Birmingham in a couple weeks. Looking forward to a great conference there. Okay. It is 1:53. So we are not going to go through this whole section right here. Instead, what I would recommend to the both of you is your thoughts on fiduciary responsibility, ethical consideration. Please put that in your closing statement. So, Mark, you're able to go first again. I know that we could have spent 2 more hours on this, and there's a lot more to say. But if you would please re-summarize your argument. If you'd like to put any content in there on the ethical considerations for the audience to think through, please do that. And then Todd, you will be able to go. Then we will have a final poll and let the jury deliberate. All right. Mark, you have the floor. Let's call it 2 minutes.
Okay. So my esteemed colleague Todd, I'm so grateful for Todd. So I love the way his mind thinks. I love how wrong he is about so many things, so that he and I have an opportunity to hash things out. Ray Dalio, one of my favorite authors, talked about how he got to a point in his life when he was actively seeking out the most intelligent people that strongly disagreed with him. And I think Todd and I have found that in each other, and I'm grateful for it. I truly am. So, yeah, so I think I've maybe stated my position very clearly. Like property managers that are aspiring to the highest good they can do, it is incumbent on them to closely examine where their profits are coming from. They should maximize profits, absolutely, and they should make sure those profits are driving. Not just saying with the words that are coming out of their mouths that they want to do the right thing and that they hate doing stuff that, that's not good for the owner. Okay, that doesn't go far enough. Let's make sure that the profits come from those outcomes that are most closely aligned with the long-term benefit of the owner whose business we are running and who doesn't see things as clearly as we do, not paternalistic, not condescending. Else, we will continue inviting unnecessary and restrictive legislation into our industry.
Okay, Todd.
Yeah, I would just say, I think the best way to summarize, my view on this, I saw that Charles commented how much profit is too much profit in the chat, and my answer to that would be there's no number for that. It's whatever the market decides. That's really what this is about. The market makes the decision as to what the right amount you can charge for your services is. And, later on in the conversation, I saw someone else mention that it's not hard to figure this out. Put both models out there and see which one wins. That would be my challenge to Mark and anyone else who thinks there's something wrong with the way that property managers charge for fees. Don't just make little tweaks around the margins. That's a cop out. Put this model out there, go for it 110% and see how it performs. See what owners like, see what they want. And my argument is traditional PM fee structures as we've had them are what clients want, and it's what's in their best interest. It's what's in everyone's best interest. I think it is, as Second Nature would call it, a triple win. I think it works for everybody. I don't think there's any sort of misaligned incentives here as I've gone through today. I think, if you think there is, put it to the test and see what the market says, because the market is the ultimate arbiter of all of this, regardless of what any poll we're about to see the results of say. The market determines what's actually in the best interest of the consumer. That's the way I look at it.
Okay, thank you for that concise statement. I will make a few comments from the bench, as is not tradition in America, but since this is the Profit Power Hour. Oh, thank you, Steve. Yes, I will put my real hair back on. So I have a couple comments on this that I think might be helpful. First of all, I think the conversation is really beneficial. I think having the debate over fee structures and incentives, and honestly, there's a long list of things we should probably be doing more conversations in this format on, since so many people are doing things differently in property management. And I think what we all know is that there's a lot of different ways to win in the industry, as long as we're doing, and both of you men, I'm sure, would agree with this, what's in the best interest of our clients. And the mode to how that is happening, you disagree on. And I understand that. But I would say above all of that sits two things that I think property management company owners should keep in mind as they work through how to be compensated. And I would describe that as a focus on gratitude and client lifetime value creation. So this to me, this starts with an understanding that every one of us has been given a tremendous amount of resources and people to steward. You have tenants, you have owners, you have properties, you have employees, and we should be seeking to make the most of the opportunity to steward those things. And then our aim should be, however we find it best, and we may disagree on methodology, but if our aim is to create as much value as possible for all of those people, right? We mostly focused on owners today, but I think this is true across the board: owners, tenants, team members, working with everyone's best interest in mind and creating value at every interaction. And what I've found personally, and what we found at Profit Coach, is that when your focus is on gratitude and value creation, there are nearly endless opportunities to be able to make lasting profit, right? And we want to avoid the two extremes. And we've talked about both of them briefly, which is not enough profit, like profit is bad. Both of you are saying no, you're saying no to profit is bad, or predatory profit, however you may describe it, taking advantage of people in order to make profits, right? I'm not saying, Todd, you're saying like any profit you're not saying any profit is good profit. You're just saying the source of the profit is not the issue. But I would imagine you agree with, there is such a thing as predatory profit making, and maybe not. But that's where we want to avoid those extremes. And so whether you choose to do that in more of an all-in-one rolled up management fee, or with a list of fees and the traditional fee structure, if your focus is on creating value, then I think you're always going to be in a place where you have the opportunity to run a highly profitable business. So We would do some Q&A, but it's already the top of the hour. So instead, I do want to put out before we go the deliberations for the jury. So jury, your instructions are to fill out this poll. Where do you stand, Mr. and Mrs. Jury member? We're going to launch that poll right here, ending the last one. And Katie, if you'll put that up, there you go. Where do you stand at the conclusion of this? With Todd, the system isn't broken. Stop trying to fix it. With Mark, we shouldn't win where our clients lose, or some blend of the two. And if you are in that some blend of the two category, I would encourage you to share your opinion in the chat. So as you're filling that out, and I will reveal that before we leave, just a reminder, our next Profit Power Hour is going to be Wednesday, June 25th, same time, same place. That'll be episode 6. Before we go, 3, 2, 1, ending the poll, sharing the results. Okay, so we have quite a bit of mixed opinions here. Some blend of the two is tied with Todd. There's nothing broken here, but still a solid amount of people who are saying we're winning when our clients lose, and I don't like it. But it looks like most people are somewhere with both of you. There's probably some good we can take from both sides. So certainly not a wipeout there. All right, thank you guys so much for your time. I appreciate it. I know it was a lot to cover, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.